barely struggling along. And you're absolutely right. What's happened over the last few years is taxes have increasingly been changed in the direction so that if you're a modest working family or if you're a retiree, you're paying a higher percentage of your income in taxes than somebody who's making $10, $20 million a year. And Warren Buffett put it the best.
Yes.
Warren Buffett said, it makes no sense that my secretary pays more of her salary as a percentage in taxes than I do as Warren Buffett. And Warren Buffett's absolutely right. And he challenged people and said, I'll give $100,000 to anyone who could prove that my secretary pays more in taxes as a percentage of her income than me. And of course, you can't do that. Warren Buffett doesn't put $100,000 on the table without doing it for a good reason. And as a state, we should be moving away from property taxes. We should have an income tax that's based on the ability to pay. And we need to be careful about how we spend our money. But we need to recognize that taxes are part of the way that we participate. Our grandparents paid taxes so that their kids could have good schools. Our parents paid so that we could have good schools. And it's part of our duty as citizens to make sure that the kids of the next generation do. If for no other reason, then as we grow older, we want a good economy behind us because we want our kids to succeed and we need them to be able to take care of us too.
But the other side, from the side of the working families, even object to millionaires paying one cent more, and it's very difficult to reach a consensus of any type. So.
Yeah, it's one of the sad things that's happened in politics. That's why at Minnesota 2020, we say politics shouldn't be about personalities. It shouldn't be about knocking people down. It should be about building people up.
Yeah.
And having been involved in public policy and having been an elected official for many, many years, the sad thing is you see a lot of politicians now who sign these pledges.
Yes.
And they say, well, I signed a pledge, and my pledge was that I would never, ever do this. Well, I tell you, I raised 3 sons. And, one of the things that you do as a parent is you learn how to draw lines in the sand where you need to draw lines in the sand, but you also have to be flexible because your kids change, the needs change, there's things that you learn over time. And the reality is, anyone who says that they're opposed to taxes doesn't want roads and doesn't want schools. And if they say, oh no, I want those things, then they're okay with taxes. Then the only question is how you raise those taxes. And what I see from some folks who say that they don't want to raise taxes is they're really protecting extremely wealthy at the expense of everybody else. Because when the state, for example, doesn't raise taxes, it pushes down and then local schools, and here in places like White Bear, you see property taxes going up. And of course that hits retirees more, and that hits folks who can least afford to pay.
Thinking back a half a century, which is frightening, when I was graduating from college, Ted Metow in the political science department talked about finding proximate solutions to insoluble problems. Proximate. In a compromise, no one's going to be completely happy, but proximate solutions to some seemingly insoluble problems. We do have to pay. The people in Duluth, want roads so they can get in and out.
Yeah, with the floods in Duluth, you think about it, $100 million cost for infrastructure because roads washed out. Literally people were driving down the road during the rainstorm, and the rains were so extreme, 9 inches of rain coming down in an hour, it washed the ground up from right under the roads. Well, those things have to be paid for. And so as you listen to the so-called Tea Party folks or Paulites or others like that, you can appreciate their frustration. They want things to be efficient. They want to know that their money is going towards good things. But at the end of the day, if you don't repair your roads, you're going to pay for it because your car is going to get broken down that much faster, and you'll pay for it out of your own pocket. If we don't have good schools, if we refuse to pay for education for schools, our next generation workforce isn't going to be good, and businesses are going to go to states that have high quality schools. My bottom line, when I look at it, is to say, okay, let's look at the states that have had different strategies and who do we want to be like? Well, Mississippi has the lowest taxes. They have the worst schools because they haven't invested in them. Their public education is not very good. And you know what the result is? High unemployment, high levels of poverty, and most Minnesotans would tell you they don't want to live in Mississippi. On the other hand, Minnesota, which historically has had taxes, not the highest, but near the higher end, high quality workforce, lots of Fortune 500 companies, a strong private sector and a strong public sector, And we've done very well. And I think we should look at things and go, you know what? The solution is not Mississippi. The solution is the Minnesota that our parents built, and that's the sort of thing that we want to do again.
And the key element is schools,
Yeah.
as we've already mentioned several times. Should schools be market-based? That is, should they be opposed to each other as two businesses are? Or what type of model should school districts have?
Well, some people make the argument that we should have vouchers, that basically parents should get a check and just shop around and find whatever school they want to find. Now, I would argue, and in Minnesota 2020, we think that market-based solutions, and we just did a big report on this, aren't the solution. Because in the private sector, what happens is if you've got Best Buy and Circuit City competing against one another and Circuit City goes broke, even though tens of thousands of people lose their jobs and all those stores go black when Circuit City did go bankrupt and went down, that's the cost of doing business. Now, all those investors in Circuit City, people that own stock, they lost all their money. With public education, that's not a very good model because we don't want half the kids to succeed and we're okay with half the kids failing. We want all the kids to succeed. So the key thing there is how do you have accountability? And we have accountability because we have ways of measuring student success, and we do work hard on measuring that. Teachers are held to very high standards. Most folks don't realize how hard teachers work. And we talked about this earlier. When you've got 30 kids in your class, you're not sloughing to begin with. Just keeping order is going to be an issue. And our teachers do amazing, amazing work. And what we need to do, I think, is do a better job of supporting our teachers because public education is actually a sacrifice. Most teachers could make a lot more money working someplace else. And I think as citizens, we need to applaud public educators and applaud teachers and recognize that when we support education, we're not only building for the future, but we're making sure that we've got the strong communities that we need.
At the risk of being slightly personal, how have public schools helped you and your family?
Well, I've told this story to a lot of folks, but I grew up in a family where I lost my father to alcoholism. I was a young man. I was doing badly at school. I was in a place that a lot of young people wind up when they've gone through a lot of family trouble. And I feel so lucky because I had a bunch of teachers who kind of rallied around me. I look back and wonder, boy, I was a pretty angry young guy because I not only was doing bad at school, but I had a little bit of an attitude. And they really held my feet to the fire, but they took time. I had opportunities to do extracurriculars. I got involved in things like speech and debate. And those gave me the opportunities so that I could succeed. And I went from being a scrawny Norwegian Lutheran kid in a little town in Worthington, Minnesota, and I got the chance to run for governor, to be in the legislature, to become a criminal prosecutor. Those are things that in most other states I wouldn't have had that opportunity. But because Minnesota believed that every kid, even a kid from a small town, should have a chance for success, that's why I'm so blessed to have grown up in Minnesota. I worry what's happening to those kids now as class sizes get bigger and bigger, as teachers feel overwhelmed with so many standardized tests and things like that. We need to do things to support our teachers and support our communities so that the kids who are going through the same things that I went through as a kid have opportunities as well.
Okay. Now, in the immediate future, in November 2012, there are two constitutional amendments on the ballot that speak to the future of Minnesota. Does Minnesota 2020 have a position on the two amendments? One is defining marriage as only between a man and a woman, and the other is on the so-called photo ID.
That's right. So Minnesota 2020 is focused on transportation, economic development, healthcare, and then education. And so we have weighed in on these amendments from the point of view of, are these the things that we should be focused on right now? Mm-hmm. Are these the big issues that we should be putting before the voters? And we think these are mostly issues of distraction as opposed to issues that bring people together. Voter ID is a good example. In Minnesota, we have no problem with voter fraud. We have a very clean voter system. And when the challenges have gone out and said, can you find examples of voter fraud? At most every year, a couple of people are prosecuted. And they're found because they vote and they're not supposed to vote. But should we be spending millions and millions of dollars creating a brand new system that everyone should have to present their driver's license when they vote? When my grandma was in the nursing home, she didn't have a driver's license, and yet she voted until just before she died. And how is she going to go from the nursing home to the county courthouse to get herself a driver's license. So it seems like a solution in search of a problem. So we see that as a distraction. Likewise, gay marriage is banned in Minnesota by law. This would put it in the Constitution. And it strikes us at Minnesota 2020, this is another one of those distractions. People have views on it. I personally think that people should have the freedom to make the decisions they want. If the Lutheran Church thinks that's okay, or the UCC thinks that's okay, and wants to do it, let the churches decide that's all right. If another church doesn't want to, then the church should have the right to decide that's not all right. But people should have that freedom to come together. But fundamentally at Minnesota 2020, our view is, let's focus on the things that bring us together. And these are divisive issues that to me seem designed by politicians to pull people apart and distract us with some sort of shiny object to pay attention to, while our schools are not getting the support they need, while our roads are not getting the help that they need, while our economic development isn't getting the help that it needs. Let's focus on the big things that pull people together rather than some of these issues that pull us apart.
Okay, so it may be designed, those amendments may be designed just to attract a certain type of voter to the poll.
Not to be overly cynical about it, but I think that what we see with a lot of politics now are things that are less about those issues than about how do you agitate people, how do you get them stirred up. And I think a better politics, I remember Senator Dave Durenberger, who was Republican, and of course Arnie Carlson, former Republican governor. You see folks like Governor Carlson coming out opposed to these amendments. And, Governor Carlson actually signed a bill against gay marriage when he was governor. And he says now, look, this stuff is all just distracting us. Let's focus on the core issues that we need. And, of course, he was one of our last Republican governors.
Yeah. And AFL-CIO is opposed to both of those amendments. And we want to address the real issues of jobs,
Yeah.
And taxes. On the website, Minnesota 2020, you have a long list of partners, which includes some unions. How does Minnesota 2020 partner with groups?
Well, if someone who's listening is a member of a nonprofit or an organization like a union, we'll often work with them as we do studies. So, for example, we've worked with AFL construction unions, taking a look at what are the strategies so that people can get the job training they need. What are the strategies so that we can make sure that our roads and bridges are in good shape? And so if you're working with a neighborhood group or a community organization or someone like that that's trying to figure out what can we do, Minnesota 2020 can be a partner in doing that research and in publicizing some of the positive ways that we can work together. And this isn't an issue about Republicans and Democrats. It's an issue about how do communities come together for positive solutions. And that's what we try and do. And I encourage folks to go to our website, mn2020, and take a look at what we've got so they can see how Minnesota 2020 can be a partner in helping to build up your local community.
Okay. Matt Entenza, founder of Minnesota 2020 and advocate for the future of Minnesota. Our time is gone. Thanks to our award-winning director, Roger Carlson, and his all-retiree crew, Dick Nielsen, Mary Benner, Ed Rapp, Larry Chadwick, for making this program possible. And thanks so much to Matt Entenza for the perspective of Minnesota 2020 on the future of Minnesota. He made us think of what is possible. And to our viewers, I would say thank you as well. And please join us for other policy discussions that affect union retirees and working families everywhere. Voices of Experience is brought to you by the Minnesota State Retiree Council, AFL-CIO.